Over the following weeks, Emily kept telling herself she was imagining things. Friendships changed. People got busier. Life moved on. That had to be all this was. Still, every time she picked up her phone, she found herself scrolling through old conversations with Sarah. There had been a time when they exchanged 20 or 30 messages a day. Funny pictures, complaints about work, questions about dinner, random memories from high school that somehow surfaced without warning. Now entire days passed without a single message. Sometimes Emily was the only one starting the conversation. Sometimes Sarah answered hours later. Sometimes not at all. One Friday afternoon, Emily was leaving school when one of her students handed her a drawing. It showed a teacher holding hands with another woman. "That's you," the little girl said proudly. "And who's this?" "My mummy says everyone needs a best friend." Emily smiled. "So, this is my best friend." The little girl nodded enthusiastically. "You always smile when you talk about her." Emily thanked her, folded the picture carefully, and placed it inside her bag. Driving home, she realized something. She hadn't smiled when talking about Sarah in quite a while. That thought stayed with her all evening. Ryan noticed she was quieter than usual during dinner. "You okay?" Emily shrugged. "I miss her." "I'm sure she misses you too." "Then why does it feel like she's avoiding me?" Ryan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached across the table and took her hand. "Maybe she just needs time." Emily nodded. "I wish she'd tell me that." The following Saturday, they attended a neighborhood barbecue hosted by one of Ryan's co-workers. Emily wasn't particularly interested in going, but Ryan insisted it would be good to get out of the house. About halfway through the afternoon, while waiting in line for hamburgers, someone called her name. "Emily." She turned around. It was Sarah. For a second, Emily's face lit up. "Sarah." They hugged, but the hug felt different, shorter, more awkward, almost like two co-workers meeting after years apart instead of lifelong friends. "What are you doing here?" Emily asked. "My agency designed some promotional material for the event." "Oh," Sarah smiled politely. "How have you been?" Emily laughed. "You tell me." Sarah looked away. "I've just been really busy." Emily wanted to ask more. She wanted to ask why busy suddenly meant disappearing from someone's life. Instead, she simply said, "I've missed you." Sarah's smile faded for the briefest moment. "I know." Neither of them spoke. The silence felt strangely heavy. Ryan walked over carrying 2 paper plates. "Oh, hey Sarah." "Hi." He smiled warmly. "It's been a while." "Yeah." Sarah barely looked at him. She excused herself less than a minute later. "I should get back." Emily watched her disappear into the crowd. "That was weird," Ryan said quietly. Emily nodded. It wasn't always like this. No, it really wasn't. On the drive home, neither of them talked much. Ryan finally broke the silence. "Do you think she's angry about something?" "I've replayed every conversation we've had since the wedding, and I can't think of a single reason." That night, Emily couldn't sleep. Around midnight, she opened social media. Sarah had posted a picture from the barbecue. She was smiling beside several co-workers, dozens of comments, dozens of replies. Emily noticed something else. Sarah hadn't tagged her. For years, every birthday, every holiday, every vacation included photos of the two of them together. Now, it was as if Emily had quietly disappeared from Sarah's life. The next morning, Emily made a decision. She wasn't going to keep guessing. She drove to Sarah's apartment with a box of pastries from the bakery they used to visit every Sunday morning. The building manager recognized her immediately. "Haven't seen you in a while." "I know. You looking for Sarah?" Emily smiled. "Yeah." The older man hesitated. "I think she's home." Emily thanked him and took the elevator upstairs. She stood outside apartment 312 for almost a full minute before knocking. No answer. She knocked again. This time she heard footsteps. The door opened just a few inches. Sarah looked surprised. "Emily?" "I was in the neighborhood." "You were?" Emily lifted the pastry box. "I thought maybe we could have coffee." For a second, Sarah looked like she might actually say yes. Then her eyes shifted past Emily, toward the parking lot, toward Ryan's car. He had driven Emily because they planned to go shopping afterward and was waiting downstairs. Sarah's entire expression changed. "I'm sorry." "What?" "I really can't." Emily frowned. "Sarah, I have work. It's Sunday." "I know." Emily stood there silently. Finally, she asked the question that had been growing inside her for months. "Did I do something?" Sarah's eyes immediately filled with guilt. "No." "Then tell me what's happening." "I can't." "You can't, or you won't." Sarah looked down at the floor. "I'm sorry." She quietly closed the door. Emily remained standing in the hallway long after the lock clicked into place. She had expected anger, maybe an argument, even tears. She had never expected nothing. When she finally returned to the parking lot, Ryan immediately noticed her face. It didn't go well. Emily climbed into the passenger seat without answering. Ryan started the engine but didn't drive away. "What happened?" Emily stared through the windshield. "She looked at your car." Ryan frowned. "My car?" Before she closed the door. He looked genuinely confused. "That's strange." Emily slowly nodded. "That's exactly what I thought." Neither of them realized it then, but that small glance toward Ryan's car was the first real clue either of them had seen. For the next few days, Emily couldn't stop thinking about that moment outside Sarah's apartment. It hadn't been the way Sarah looked at her. It hadn't even been the awkward conversation. It was the way her expression had changed the instant she noticed Ryan's car in the parking lot. At first, Emily told herself she was reading too much into it. But once the thought entered her mind, it refused to leave. Monday morning, while getting ready for work, she casually mentioned it. "I think Sarah recognized your car." Ryan looked up from tying his tie. "My car? Yeah. So? I don't know." He shrugged. "Maybe she's seen it before. I guess." It was a perfectly reasonable explanation. Still, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something hadn't been right. Life moved on. Report cards, parent-teacher conferences, soccer practice for their nephew, dinner with Ryan's parents. Everything looked normal on the outside. Inside, however, Emily constantly felt as though she were waiting for something she couldn't name. About 2 weeks later, she stopped by a bookstore after work. It had been one of her favorite places since college. She wandered through the fiction section before carrying a novel to the checkout counter. As she waited in line, someone walked in through the front entrance. Sarah. Emily instinctively smiled. Finally. A chance encounter. No awkward appointment, no unanswered texts, just two old friends meeting by coincidence. She raised her hand. "Sarah." Her friend froze for just a split second. Then she forced a smile. "Emily." "What are the odds?" "I know." Emily walked over. "I've been meaning to call you." Sarah nodded. I've been busy. Emily laughed softly. You're always busy lately. Sarah didn't answer. Before the silence became uncomfortable, Emily asked, Do you have a minute? Sarah glanced toward the front window. I actually have someone waiting. Oh. Emily looked outside. A silver SUV was parked near the curb. Its windows were tinted. The driver remained inside. Emily couldn't make out the person's face. I won't keep you. Sarah smiled apologetically. I'm really sorry. Then, almost without thinking, Emily asked, Can we have dinner next week? Sarah hesitated, long enough for Emily to notice. I don't think that's a good idea. Emily blinked. What? I'm sorry. Why wouldn't it be a good idea? Sarah looked like she wanted to say something. Instead, she quietly replied, Some things are easier if they stay the way they are. Emily stared at her. I don't understand. I know. Sarah turned toward the door. Before leaving, she stopped. Without looking back, she said quietly, You have a good husband, Emily. Then she walked outside. Emily remained standing in the middle of the bookstore. The sentence echoed in her mind. You have a good husband. Why would Sarah say that? When Emily got home that evening, Ryan was making pasta. He smiled as she walked into the kitchen. Perfect timing. I saw Sarah today. Ryan paused for only a fraction of a second. Really? At the bookstore? How is she? Emily watched him carefully. She said something strange. What? She told me I have a good husband. Ryan slowly stirred the sauce. Well, he forced a small laugh. I appreciate the compliment. Emily smiled. So do I. But she noticed something. Ryan didn't ask anything else. Not where Sarah had been. Not what she'd been buying. Not whether they'd talked. Nothing. The conversation simply ended. That night, after Ryan had fallen asleep, Emily lay awake staring into the darkness. She wasn't suspicious. Not yet. She was simply confused. 3 days later, Emily was cleaning the kitchen while Ryan mowed the lawn. His phone buzzed on the counter. She wasn't the type of wife who checked her husband's messages. In 13 years together, she'd never felt the need. The screen lit up for only a second, just long enough for one notification to appear. Sarah Mitchell Emily instinctively looked away. She hadn't read the message itself, only the name. Her heart started beating faster. She immediately felt guilty. She hadn't meant to look. When Ryan came back inside a few minutes later, he picked up the phone without noticing anything unusual. Emily almost asked. Instead, she waited. During dinner, Ryan seemed perfectly relaxed. He talked about work, asked about her students, suggested taking a weekend trip before winter. Nothing about Sarah. After the dishes were done, Emily finally spoke. I ran into Sarah again. Ryan looked up from the couch. Oh, yeah, he nodded. That's nice. She texted you today. Ryan's expression didn't change. She did. Emily waited. He didn't continue. What did she want? Ryan looked down at his phone. She asked about your birthday. My birthday was 3 months ago. I know. Emily frowned. What exactly did she ask? Ryan unlocked his phone, scrolled for a second, then handed it to her without hesitation. Read it. Emily looked down. The conversation was short. Sarah, did Emily like the photo album? Ryan, she loved it. Thank you again. Emily frowned. The photo album. Ryan smiled. The anniversary gift. Then she remembered their first wedding anniversary. Ryan had surprised her with a custom photo album filled with pictures from childhood, college, their engagement, and the wedding. One entire section had included photographs she'd forgotten even existed. She cried when she opened it. "I thought you made that." "I did," Ryan smiled. "Sarah helped me find some old pictures." Emily felt embarrassed. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "I don't know." She laughed awkwardly. "I guess seeing her name surprised me." Ryan leaned over and kissed her forehead. "You don't have to apologize." Emily smiled back. For a moment, everything made sense again. At least until the following Sunday, because that was the day Emily discovered something that made even less sense than the message. Something Ryan himself didn't know she would ever see. Sunday mornings had always been Emily's favorite. Ryan usually made pancakes. She brewed coffee. Soft music played through the kitchen while sunlight spilled across the hardwood floor. It was one of those little traditions they had created without ever discussing it. That particular Sunday felt no different, at least not at first. After breakfast, Ryan remembered he had promised to help his father replace a fence in the backyard. "I'll only be gone a couple of hours." Emily smiled. "Take your time. I'll pick up dinner on the way home." "Sounds good." As soon as he left, Emily decided to organize the hallway closet. It had become a place where random papers disappeared, old warranties, instruction manuals, unused gift bags, receipts. She carried everything into the living room and began sorting through it one pile at a time. Most of it went straight into the trash. Then she found a large white envelope tucked between two board games. There was nothing unusual about that, until she noticed the return address. It belonged to Sarah's advertising agency. Emily frowned. Why would Sarah's office be sending mail to their house? She turned the envelope over. It had already been opened. Inside was a folded thank you card. Nothing official, just a simple card. Emily unfolded it. The handwriting was unmistakably Sarah's. "Thank you for everything. I couldn't have done it without you." No signature, no explanation, no date, nothing else. Emily read it again, then again. Her first thought wasn't that Ryan had done something wrong. It was much simpler. Maybe he had helped Sarah with her taxes. Maybe he'd given financial advice. That was literally his job. Still, if it had been something ordinary, why hadn't either of them ever mentioned it? She placed the card back inside the envelope. For the next hour, she tried convincing herself she was overthinking everything. By the time Ryan returned home, carrying takeout from their favorite Mexican restaurant, she had almost succeeded. Almost. Dinner was pleasant. They watched a movie afterward. Ryan fell asleep halfway through. Emily stayed awake. Not because of the card, because of the silence surrounding it. The next morning, she stopped by her mother-in-law's house. On the way home from work, Linda had invited her for coffee several days earlier. While sitting at the kitchen table, the conversation naturally drifted toward old family friends. Linda smiled. "I haven't seen Sarah in forever." Emily looked up. "Really?" "No. I assumed she and Ryan still kept in touch." Linda frowned. "Why would they?" Emily laughed awkwardly. "I don't know. Ryan barely knew her before you two got married." Emily nodded slowly. That answer should have reassured her. Instead, it raised another question. If Ryan and Sarah barely knew each other, why was Sarah writing him thank you cards? On Wednesday afternoon, Emily ran into Sarah's older brother, David, at a grocery store. They hadn't spoken in years, but he immediately recognized her. "Emily." "David." After a few minutes of small talk, Emily casually asked, How's Sarah? He smiled.